Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Parthaya Pradibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Graditam Puranin Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manasandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yenetvaya Bharata Taila Purna Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gita Mritam Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gita Mritam Mahata Vasudeva Sudam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Thank you all for joining us again. In the last class, Lord Krishna said, renunciation of desire-driven actions is sannyasa, and renunciation of the fruit of action is tyaga. We also heard different opinions on the matter. Sannyasa can mean total renunciation or partial renunciation of actions, while tyaga always refers to the renunciation of the fruit of action. If it is total renunciation of actions, the sannyasis live purely on alms and cannot stay in one place for more than a few days to avoid attachment. They also discard the sacred thread. You might have seen it. It comes on the left shoulder of the person down to the right. So they discard that sacred thread because they are discarding all of the usual rituals for which the thread was necessary. Especially in ancient times, householders had to maintain a pot of fire throughout their life to use in their daily fire ceremonies. But when they became a sannyasi, they also give up that fire because it is no longer necessary, because you're not doing those rituals anymore. Until sannyasa, men at least, keep a tuft of hair on the back of the head called a shika, and that signifies attachment to three things: God, Guru, and the scriptures. That shika also is thrown into the fire when we take sannyasa, symbolically renouncing the notion that we are separate from God, Guru, and the scriptures. The idea is that we're no longer separate. We are one with God, Guru, and the scriptures. It's a tradition and it's symbolic. I think that, especially myself, I would like to make efforts at that. I won't say I've attained it yet. Then there was another view on the matter saying that one need not renounce the compulsory rituals and rituals for atonement, which is prayaschitta karmas. It means if you did something wrong or if you didn't do the right thing, you have to atone for it. In Judean Christian language, we would say atonement, but in India they just call it prayaschitta. It's trying to make up for that. It is enough to mentally renounce all personal benefit that might come from those rituals. And naturally, selfish and adharmic actions are already forbidden. So the question is only about the usual daily and periodic rituals. And when taken in this way, sannyasa is possible for householders also. That's what we learned last week. You can actually be a sannyasi or sannyasini figuratively in your home. And after giving the opinions of other sages from verse 4, Krishna began to give his own answers. And according to Krishna, sannyasa and tyaga. Sannyasa is relinquishment of everything, supposedly. And tyaga is to abandon the fruits of things, right? But to Krishna, they're the same. And we will see that it's the same with Amma. They're just different words for one and the same renunciation. Krishna also clarifies that renunciation of all karma is not necessary. Karma here means actions. I know it's a confusing thing. I thought karma was my fate. That is also karma in the Sanskrit. But here, karma means actions. And it's really understandable, though, because when you do an action, there's automatically a repercussion of that, and that is what we call karma. But in this case, we're talking about a karma that we are not vested in. We've renounced the results of it, the fruits of it, so to speak. So it's a different kind of karma, but it's still a karma, so to speak. So Krishna also clarifies that the renunciation of all such karmas is not necessary to preserve the fundamental duties of householders. You can be a householder and take your sannyasa and still, do your daily pujas. In verse 5, Krishna glorified the three duties of yajna, dhanam, and tapas. So yajna means some kind of ritual, some kind of offering. Dhanam is charity to needy people and worthy people. And tapas is some austerities that we have to do to keep the mind under our control or to tame the mind. And he's going to emphasize those three again today. From verse 7 onwards, Krishna will describe the three types of sannyasa, which are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So now, let us see how wise people maintain their inner purity even while performing their daily duties. This is a topic that is going to come up today, and that was introduced in the last class. So we'll see, starting from the least ideal kind of sannyasa, Krishna is going to lead us to that higher level of sannyasa. Verse 6. We will chant each verse part by part and then chant slowly together. Etan yapi tu karmani sangam tva palani cha kartavyaniti me parta nishchitam matam uttamam. Now together. Etanyapi tu karmani sangam tyaktva palani cha kartavyaniti me parta nishchitam matam uttamam. O Partha, but even these acts should be performed without attachment to the fruits. This is my best and firm conviction. So the reason why that but is coming there is just simply because he mentioned these, the daily or nitya karmas in the previous verse, and he's saying, yes, you can do those, but there should be no attachment to the fruits. So it's a continuation of verse 5. Now let us look at the commentaries. The first 3 verses of today's class, I won't be using so much from Shankaracharya's commentary because he gets into a lot of technical things that really don't bother us, I feel. So to save time and focus on more of Amma's teachings, I'm just using the parts where it seems really needed for this group. But he says the words, but even these acts refer to yajna, dana, and tapas. We knew that. But it seems there, and at that time there was an objection about that. Maybe it meant something else, because he's not specifically talking about which acts, he just says these acts. So it's kind of a minor correction. But Shankaracharya also quotes previous verses from the Gita, making it amply clear that Krishna has been consistent about discarding selfish actions, not all actions. And then Jnaneshwar, as always, fantastic commentaries today. Even one who heads a great sacrifice, performing it with absolutely no flaw, the delusion that he is the doer should not be allowed to stick to him. A person visiting a holy place as a hired agent, because you might be like a guide. So as a hired agent, feels no egoistic satisfaction of being the person undertaking the pilgrimage. When a person under authority derived from the king overpowers his adversary single-handed, even the king who authorized him cannot boast of being the conqueror. One who crosses over a river clinging to the waist of another cannot boast of being the swimmer. A family priest distributing charities on behalf of his master cannot put on airs of being the donor. In that way, one should move the chess piece in the form of actions by performing them without any conceit of being the doer, and should not even allow the mind to think about the fruit that may be born from the actions. Here, I'm just to take a little time out. This chess piece concept and all these similes that he's giving are to make us understand that, you're not the body. And even if you were the body, you have no control over every aspect of it. Sometimes, you might be sick and you can't do it. So it's not up to you whether the body is going to work or not. So you're the witness inside watching it happen. So you're objectively looking at it, even the actions that you do with your own body. So relinquishing the notion of being the doer is actually the truth, rather than some, fancy that we're entertaining in our mind. Continuing, one should begin the performance of actions by relinquishing the expectations of personal benefit in the way a wet nurse breastfeeds another woman's child with an absolutely blank mind. That's what we do in the pujas too. We just, before we start, we say, I'm not doing this, you're doing it, basically. The action should be performed completely devoid of desire for the results, in the way a peepal tree is watered with no expectation of any fruit. Now the word peepal tree, it's actually a Bodhi tree. Some people might recognize that name more. Indians will recognize peepal tree. You water it with no expectation for any fruit because you can't eat the fruit. So you're just doing it because it's, you should give water to especially sacred plants and all plants. And it is devoid of desire, like a cowherd collects and takes all the village cows out for grazing, dropping all desire for milk. He's just herding the cows. They don't belong to him, so he takes them out, comes back, but he doesn't get the milk. At least he can't guarantee that he's going to get the milk. The same attitude should be adopted in regard to the fruits of action. Those who perform actions adopting this process secure a meeting with their self, Atma Darshana. Therefore, my best message to everyone is that they should perform all actions dropping all physical attachment. I repeat over and over again that one who is tired of this life of shackles and feels anxious for his liberation should not neglect these words. That's pretty clearly stated, isn't it? And Swami Chidbhavananda, his commentary says here, the grabbing mind shrinks. The mind that gives grows in abundance. Life at the base level thrives by grabbing. Life at the divine level fulfills itself by giving. The mother maintains her motherhood by ever giving to her child and never seeking anything from it. The cow is held sacred because of her gifts. Humanity's height of glory is in the contribution that we make, not in the wealth we amass. Sounds very much like what Amma says, right? Wise people maintain their purity by their constant contribution in the form of yajna, dana, and tapas. So we're going to get into that yajna, dana, and tapas a lot more in a little while. These benevolent activities are as natural with them as subsisting is with lesser beings. In other words, he's comparing wise people with lesser beings, whatever that is. It could be human or animal, I don't know. These sacred acts emanating from the holy ones have a purifying effect on givers and those who receive alike. And these are the means to maintain the sanctity of the world. This is the law that governs life at spiritual level. And Sri Ramakrishna Deva said, those who want to make progress in spirituality and realize God have to protect themselves first from base desires. Attainment of perfection is impossible without purity of mind. Now, when you think of the word purity, you might think like, oh, I don't think of really bad things. I'm very pure. But the definition of pure here is much more strict. Anger is an impurity. Jealousy is an impurity. All these, the 6 enemies, desire, greed, all these things. And to any degree, they still qualify as impurities. So I think all of us have a lot of homework to complete here. And in this verse, Krishna says, Sangam bhalani cha chaktva, meaning that we should do our duties, having abandoned attachment and the results. So do the duties, but under these conditions. And that way, it becomes nishkama karma. That means selfless actions. Then we can do all of our duties, yajna, dana, tyaga, anything, without any worries. So this is like the, vaccine. If you have that vaccine of detachment from the doership notion and from the fruits of the actions, then we have nothing to worry about. Once a devotee said to Amma, Amma, I have given up so many things for the sake of God, but I still can't find peace. What do you think Amma would say to such a thing? Oh, my poor baby. No. Wrong question. She said, son, all of us talk about the sacrifices we have made, but what do we really have that we can give up? What do we have that is our own? What we consider ours today will not be ours tomorrow. Everything belongs to God. Only through His grace are we able to enjoy things. If there is anything we can call our own, it is our likes and dislikes, not good possessions, right? These are what we need to renounce. Even though we renounce many things now, we don't give up our attachment to those things. That is the reason for our sorrow. True renunciation happens only when we are convinced in our hearts that family, wealth, position, or fame will not give any lasting peace. Okay, a little bit of peace, but in the end, it's not lasting peace. And then Amma adds at the end, what does the Gita teach isn't it to act without attachment? Yes, it is. And Krishna just taught it to us. And he concludes this verse saying, "This is my conviction." You know, it means, you can kind of feel that it means you can take it or leave it. Doesn't matter, but this is what I think. And that's actually very humble. If you're an avatara and you can say, like, this is the way it is, just be quiet. You know, he could say that, but he puts it like, yeah, okay, this is my opinion, do what you want. And it's so humble, just like Amma. She says, gives so many teachings, then she, oh, you guys know all this, I'm just reminding you, it's just my opinion, you know, so humble, both are. And let us continue with verse 7. Niyatasya tu sanyasaha karmano nopapadyate mohatasya parityagas tamasa parikirtitaha. Together. Niyatasya tu sanyasaha karmano nopabhadyate mohatasya parityagas tamasa parikirtitaha. I haven't changed much in any of these verses, but I added from my own reference a couple things. But the abandonment of obligatory action is not advised, or we could say not proper. Such renunciation due to delusion is declared to be tamasic. Now that word on the first line, the abandonment, in Sanskrit it's sannyasa, or a derivation of sannyasa. And then such renunciation, that renunciation is parityaga. So even in this one verse, Krishna is using sannyasa and parityaga, or just simply tyaga, as if they were synonyms. So if Krishna says that, they must be synonyms in this context. In his commentary, Shankaracharya reminds us why abandonment of obligatory actions is not proper. It is because it is esteemed as a purifier for an unenlightened person. The funny thing is that even enlightened people continue to do these things just to set an example. They don't need to be purified anymore, but for all of us, it is esteemed as a purifier. And then he explains that such people abandon their duties because they are ignorant of the purificatory effect of such rituals. So they're ignorant, so we can't really blame them, but it's still the wrong way of going about things. Jnaneshwar says, one who relinquishes all actions out of distaste for them, in the way a person gets angry with darkness and retaliates by punishing his own eyes. He's describing these people. I call this sannyasa tamasic. It is like cutting off one's own head due to anger with a severe headache. Even though a road may be rough and uneven, we still have to try and make our feet strong enough to walk on it. Would it be right to cut off our feet in order to punish the road? In that way, the binding effect of actions should be eradicated only by performing those very same actions with the right attitude. But being deluded, tamasic people do not understand this subtle point, and thus bad karma results from the abandonment of actions under the influence of tamas. And Chidbhavananda's commentary, this is so simply put, and it connects with nature, so I really like it. To flower and fruit is the mandatory duty of a tree. The tree also relinquishes the fully matured fruit on its own. You don't have to beg the tree to release the fruit. It is a natural abandonment. Contrarily, if an ignorant person plucks an unripe fruit, its existence is wasted. Forced sannyasa from ignorance is as bad as and destructive as this. Compulsory actions vary in scale according to a person's spiritual attainment. Bathing, eating, and earning wealth are compulsory duties for an ordinary person, whereas yajna, dana, and tapas are the compulsory duties of a spiritually advanced person. So we can't expect it from everybody, but once you have an idea of spirituality, you have to do them. These sacred duties are to be discharged for as long as the body lasts. The body and these duties are inseparably connected. A rigid following of this principle increases the purity of a person. Abandoning duties through ignorance only brings greater ignorance born of tamas. Now, having said all this, if you are, connected with Amma and her ashrams and centers, and you're going regularly, you're participating in the bhajans and retreats and seva there, that is included in all these things that the Gita talks about. Your yajna, dana, and tapas will be in the form of your participation in all the things that happen in Amma's world. And Sri Ramakrishna Deva also said, a devotee should continue chanting the Lord's name and discharging his worldly duties until his mind merges in Satchidananda. So it's not like you say, okay, I've done enough, no, I'm not going to do it anymore, I did my time, so to speak. It's always, because as long as you have a body, you owe the world some debts. We'll get to that. In the 3 verses, starting from this one, Krishna speaks about the 3 types of sannyasa and tyaga, now that we know that they're synonyms for him, and for Amma too, I believe. In chapter 17 and in other places, the order was sattva, rajas, tamas, but here it is reversed, and it's going to be tamas, rajas, and sattva. Not a big difference, but just so you understand. Niyatam karma means compulsory karma, compulsory duties, which is kind of saying the same thing twice, compulsory duties. And it was first used way back in the 3rd chapter, in verse 8, where Krishna said, do your allotted duty. Action is indeed superior to inaction. Now someone might say, who decided that these actions should be compulsory, and why? Well, actually it is a concept that pervades all the Vedas, because only if human beings give back to the world will the chain of karma be complete. Animals and trees don't have karma because they're programmed. Only human beings can choose the right or wrong things. So it's not their fault, it's our fault. We have the karma that we have to make up for. Without that, the balance of nature and society will become disturbed, creating an inharmonious environment ecologically, socially, and mentally. Does that sound familiar? It's today's world, that's what it is. But many people are not ready to look at life in this way. Their ignorance and delusion, not my words, Krishna's words, lead them to question, what will I get from 5 to 10 minutes of prayer or meditation? What will I get by giving a donation to a temple or an ashram? I'm a modern man or woman with a degree. and I'm earning a hefty salary. Forget about all these customs. They're no longer relevant. These days, people use their time in pursuit of tangible possessions, forgetting the value of inner possessions. But what is needed in today's world is the inner possessions needed to perform the obligatory rituals that Krishna is talking about, because nobody does them anymore. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and start doing them every day, go to a temple and do it. No, do it in the way that Amma would want you to do. Don't spend a lot of money. It's just mentally doing them. That's all. But even that, it takes patience. It takes humility. So, and that's what the world needs right now, right? The majority of people are selfish and impatient. So the patience we develop through our daily routine will go towards restoring the balance in society, even in nature. Giving more importance to external possessions is simply delusion. It's misplaced values. And delusion is an expression of tamas. That's why we call it tamasic. Amma once explained how we can remove our own delusion. I think everybody would be interested in hearing what she has to say. She said, "We cannot relish the taste of food if we eat while holding our nose. Also, there is no more taste once the food reaches the throat and stomach. Therefore, taste is only a sensation of the tongue. If we think and analyze in this way, we will become able to eat without caring about the taste of food. In this way, by removing delusion through discernment between the eternal and the non-eternal, even while enjoying worldly pleasures, it is possible to renounce everything, attaining the state where all desires end." And I would like to show you something in a moment. It's called the sensory homunculus. It's a very hard word for me to pronounce. Sensory homunculus, something like that. And, oh, you're already showing it. Okay. It's okay, leave it, it's okay. All right, this picture that you're seeing on the screen is used in neuroanatomy and represents the human body to scale with the number of nerve endings in each place. So when you look at this person and you see where things look grotesquely oversized, that means a lot of nerve endings are in that location. The more sensitive areas are larger, while the less sensitive areas are smaller. From this drawing, if all the body parts put together represented Congress, let's say, it is amply clear that from the sensory standpoint, the mouth lobby is much more powerful than the head lobby. See, you got those two big lips and a huge tongue, right? The tongue will always win the arguments about pleasure. So, if we allow the mind to look at things from the standpoint of our senses, we will remain deluded. Okay, enough of that caricature. It's really grotesque, but actually that's what the body is when you look from the standpoint of sensory stimuli. It's not our fault. I mean, it's the way the body is developed, but we have to learn to tame it as well. Amma's advice is the only way to free ourselves from such delusion, especially sensory delusion, because scientifically it is proven that it's a sham, basically, because God gave us more sensory nerve endings in our hands and tongue and lips. Also, please remember that Arjuna's original question was, what is the difference between sannyasa and tyaga? It's an honest question that Krishna doesn't respond to directly. He just, like, Krishna does not say, oh, sannyasa and tyaga are the same thing. but he indirectly responds by using the two words interchangeably, showing that they are the same thing. And Amma does that also. I've noticed that. Like, you may ask her a question, and if you're a little bit off, she'll kind of halfway respond to your question and take you into another topic, which is going to really help you more than your own question. Okay, next is Rajasic Sannyasa. What does that look like? Verse 8. Dukkam ityeva yad karma kaya klesha bhayatyajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naivatyaga phalam labhet. Now together slowly. Dukkam ityeva yat karma kaya klesha bhayatyajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naivatyaga phalam labhet. For fear of bodily discomfort and pain, if one relinquishes actions, thus, and I'm going to change this to engaging in a rajasic renunciation, he obtains not the fruit of thereof. Okay, I'm going to make it a little bit simpler. If you relinquish action just because you're worried about bodily discomfort and pain, you are getting engaged in a rajasic kind of tyaga, because the word used in the verse is actually tyaga. He doesn't get the fruit from that renunciation, simply put. Okay. We're not going to look at the Shankaracharya commentary here. We'll start from Jnaneshwar. For example, he's going to give an example. So, for example, one has an aversion to the performance of yajna, dana, and tapas due to their difficulty. Yeah, it takes some effort to do these things. Even though he knows fully well his capability to perform them successfully, and also realizes his own duty in regard to them. It's like, you know it's the right thing to do, but you don't do it just because it's a pain. In the initial stage, an action may feel to be difficult. One feels it a burden to carry a pot containing food for his own use. In the beginning, neem tastes bitter and Chebulek myrobalan, I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but the botanical name is Terminalia chebula, which we're trying to grow here. That tastes astringent, but only in the beginning because you get used to it. In such ways, an action in its initial stage is felt to be difficult. A naughty cow has vicious horns, and a fragrant flower may have thorns, and it is a bother to cook before one experiences the happiness of a meal. All such actions impose physical exertion on the doer, which initially one may find very difficult. Even after performing a compulsory duty, starting a compulsory duty, due to the hassle he may drop the action he started as one who drops a scorching hot thing. So you said, I'm going to, help the poor people. I'm going to help the orphans. They might start it and then they're like, oh, this is such a pain. I'm going to make up some excuse and just say I can't do this anymore. That happens quite often. You might have experienced that yourself or from someone else. And then Jnaneshwar says this is what he's thinking to himself. He says to himself, why put hardship on the body by performing actions? Why not enjoy the luxuries already within grasp rather than do actions and then wait anxiously for the enjoyments to come as the fruit of the actions. He's like, we can have fun, we can have pleasure right now. Why make all that effort for something in the future? Such relinquishment of actions for fear of bodily suffering is rajasic tyaga. Though a sannyasa of sorts, it carries no fruit of relinquishment, means there's no benefit to it. And the examples are beautiful. If ghee boils over by mistake and falls into the fire, it doesn't count as an offering. If one accidentally loses his life by drowning, it does not amount to liberation from samsara by the meritorious act of jala samadhi. There are some saints who took samadhi by going into water and just, going underwater and allow their body to drop off. But you cannot say, it was jala samadhi when the person simply drowned. In that way, one who relinquishes compulsory actions out of attachment to physical comfort cannot attain the benefit of proper tyaga. In short, just as the morning light gulps up the stars, the dawn of Brahmajnana, knowledge of the Supreme Self, gulps up all actions together along with the ignorance. That is a proper relinquishment of actions, and that alone bears fruit in the form of liberation. Taking sannyasa through ignorance does not attain such mukti. Chidbhavananda Swami's commentary. Earthly existence will never be free from bodily trouble. Nothing great here can be attained without striving. If a student abandons his schooling because it feels agonizing, he does not derive the same intellectual benefit as one who subjects himself to the taxing discipline imposed by his teacher. The loafer will never become fit for higher education. He doesn't mince words either. There are people who view worldly life as full of troubles and difficulties, and they are not prepared to face those ordeals. Governed by escapism, they choose to embrace sannyasa and have a life of ease and comfort at the cost of gullible people. These are the fake swamis. They do not obtain the supreme benefit of renunciation. Not just the fake swamis, but in these pilgrim sites, they've become like tourist spots, and there will be people who just sitting there, or lying around. They wear the robes just to get money from people. But who knows what they do the rest of the time. They certainly don't obtain the supreme benefit of renunciation. Continuing with the commentary. Arjuna came to the battlefield to wage a war of righteousness, but was overwhelmed by a fit of such rajasic renunciation. He thought it was not proper to incur the sin and the pain of killing his relatives. His compulsory duty was to defend the cause of dharma and not that of his wicked relatives. This is a good lesson for all of us. Always remember what is dharma. You don't have a dharma to an adharmic relative. Never. If your relative or someone you know very well is doing adharma, you have no duty to anything for them. The thought of abandoning the righteous war crossed his mind, but it was not born of true discernment. When rajas takes over a person, their discernment gets distorted. That's most people's problem. A person of Arjuna's caliber bore evidence to this fact. He was a prince, supposed to be very well versed in scriptures, which is true, but rajas was too powerful on him. It therefore became the Lord's task to cure him of this purposeless spirit of renunciation. So, tamasic sannyasa and rajasic sannyasa are in favor of relinquishing daily duties. This yajna, dana, and tapas. The only difference between tamasic and rajasic versions is the reason behind them. They're doing the same thing, but they have their different reasons. In tamasic sannyasa, the followers are simply ignorant of the value of yajna, dana, and tapas. So they find other things to be more valuable and they pursue those. It's a sannyasa based on ignorance. In the case of rajasic sannyasa, the person is aware that yajna, dana, tapas are good, but they can't embrace them because they consider the strain to be too much due to their body attachment. It's just body attachment. They even have the physical strength to do such actions, but they lack the mental strength to overcome that strain. They lack the mental strength to bear both mental and physical pain. Now, this is Amma's area because she is the paramount tapasvini. She will say, oh, this person is a tapasi or a tapasvini. But Amma is beyond everybody. Once she said, the way to control the mind lies not in pampering it and giving it everything it demands. We should control it and turn it toward the real goal. You may do whatever work you enjoy, but it is your attitude that has to be transformed. Then even fighting on the battlefield becomes a sacred offer, a yajna. That was what Sri Krishna counseled. He didn't encourage giving up our duties for any selfish reason, nor did he advise opening our third eye while closing the other two. His example teaches us to see through our third eye while keeping the other two eyes open. That's the hard thing. If you can just close your eyes and say, oh, I'm spiritual, that's simple. But keeping your eyes open to the world and the poverty and the suffering and looking through the third eye is a real accomplishment. In other words, Sri Krishna teaches us to face life while beholding the underlying unity in everything. His example teaches us to see through our third eye while keeping the other two eyes open. I love that line. Okay, but why do we call it rajasic? This type of sannyasa. Because rajas is what creates attachment. That was discussed at the end of chapter 3, I believe. And in this case, like we said, the attachment is to the body. We don't want to cause pain to the body. Instead, we want to pamper it with sleep, food, and all that kind of stuff. We can have, of course, the requisite amount of both of those, but we have to regulate it. Physical comfort is most important for a rajasic person. And due to body attachment, such a person gives up yajna, dana, and tamas, even though he knows that they are important, they should be done. Naturally, this person will not get any benefit out of it, as Krishna said in the verse, na eva tyaga phalam labhet. Whenever we give up one form of action, it should be replaced by another and better one. Otherwise, we gradually slip into tamas, or we can say laziness. In Vedanta, or we can say Advaita Vedanta, renunciation is prescribed only to those who are capable of making their new action scriptural studies, contemplation, meditation, and so on. If Amma tells us to take renunciation, we have to. But also at the same time, we have to try to shift our focus from physical activity, if we can avoid it, and look more at scriptural studies, contemplation, meditation, and so on. Yajna, dana, and tyaga become more internal than physical. Slowly. It's not overnight. Especially around Amma, it has to be natural and gradual. As Krishna said in the 4th chapter, verse 33, the yajna of knowledge is better than the yajna through material means. So, a sannyasi or a sannyasini should try to make their offering something that comes from knowledge, rather than just doing a lot of rituals. But in Amma's ashram, it doesn't really matter, because the person who does the pujas and homas doesn't get any personal benefit from it either. That's why she allows sannyasis to do these ceremonies in her ashram, whereas they normally wouldn't be able to do them outside. Amma says it's selfless, so there's no problem. Now, the next verse, we will find out what Krishna has to say about sattvic tyagam, or sattvic renunciation, because this is what we want to emulate. Jnaneshwara gives an introduction to the next verse, saying, "Now I tell you and do hear, as the occasion demands, by what kind of tyaga emancipation comes." So how do you get liberation? Through tyaga. That is what Krishna is going to describe from verse 9. Karyam ityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate arjuna sangam tyaktva palanchaiva satyaga satviko mataha. Now together. Karyam ityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate arjuna sangam tyaktva palanchaiva satyaga satviko mataha. I only changed one thing in this verse because I felt it was grammatically wrong, where it says, because it is ought to be done. I think in sort of outdated English that might be correct, but with modern English we'll have to delete that is. So reading it out, O Arjuna, when a prescribed duty is performed, only because it ought to be done, without attachment to it and its fruit, such relinquishment is regarded as sattvic. One more time. O Arjuna, when a prescribed duty is performed, only because it ought to be done, without attachment to it and its fruit, such relinquishment is regarded as sattvic. And this word relinquishment is tyaga in the verse. Now some of Shankaracharya's commentary again. Obligatory actions, or nitya karma, should be performed merely because it ought to be done, relinquishing attachment and the fruit. It's the same thing that Krishna is saying. This kind of tyaga is recognized and approved as sattvic. So he says, he means like in the scriptures, it is validated and approved. For a person whose duty is to perform action and who discharges those compulsory duties, foregoing attachment and the desire for the fruit, their inner organ, or what is called antakarana, doesn't become impure. Antakarana, or inner organ, means the subtle body, the energy sheath, the mental sheath, and the intellectual sheath. But primarily it's the mind and intellect. That's what it's referring to. So that mind and intellect don't become impure because they're doing it properly. On the contrary, they get purified through the performance of obligatory rites. When pure and calm, the antakarana becomes capable of self-reflection. So if you find it hard to practice self-reflection? Well, doesn't mean you have to go out and do a lot of, shraddha and rituals for your ancestors. It means you have to do more yajna, dana, and tapas, which is what Amma encourages us to do, but it means we have to keep doing it. It's not like you do it, a few days and then think you're going to be able to do self-reflection perfectly. So, keep doing it. Jnaneshwar's commentary next. With great skill and as prescribed in the scriptures, Sattvic people perform actions that come to their lot in natural course. But they drop all egoism as being their doer, and also the expectation of the fruit. To disregard one's mother's words leads to complete downfall. This should be avoided, and instead one should revere and serve their mother. Should a cow be discarded altogether simply because its mouth is unholy? Even Amma doesn't, she doesn't kiss the cows on their lips, right? She hugs them. Should the entire jackfruit be thrown away because its rind and the seed inside of it are not fit for eating? In that way, the egoism of the doer, as also the tempting taste of the fruit, constitute the bondage in action. So, just to make this a little more clear, let's say it's the season, I think it's in March or April in India. We used to get jackfruit curry like every day, everywhere we went, even if we were on tour. And, the seeds are actually considered to be tasty by some people. Actually, in the ashram, they would roast them and put them in the jackfruit curry. I think this reference about it not being fit for eating is because they create a lot of gas. And I think that's not favorable for most people. It's just in the ashram, Amma didn't want to waste any food. But the idea is that those things that are not proper, we can set those aside, but you don't have to throw away everything because of that. You can make jackfruit curry without the seeds, without the rinds. Why do you have to throw away the whole thing? So it's only that taste of the doership and the fruits of doing it. These are the only problems. So only throw away that part. Don't throw away everything. When a seed is baked, its potential to grow into a tree becomes nullified. Similarly, in one who is free from bondage to actions, having renounced their fruits, the rajas and tamas have both been destroyed. To the one who, now he's talking about someone who got realized, right? To the one whose eyes of self-knowledge have been fully opened on account of pure sattva, the non-existing but deceptive appearance of this vast universe disappears, just as a mirage does in the evening, and such a person ceases to see the deceptive appearance of the universe. The mirage analogy may need some explaining. So mirages come, if you didn't know, I was very curious to understand how they came about because it's a beautiful allegory. The mirage is created when there is a very different temperature on the soil and the air. So like about 5 feet or 10 feet higher than the ground is much cooler air than like in a desert, then the sand is really boiling hot, over 100 degrees, maybe 120 degrees. So a huge temperature difference comes in the middle of the day. But in the evening, it goes away because the sun is set and you don't see it so much. That's why the mirage disappears in the evening. Okay. Chidbhavananda Swami's commentary. While tamasic and rajasic tyaga abandon all kinds of karma or actions, the sattvic tyagi does his duty to the best of his ability, though he is unattached to it and the fruit thereof. Just repeating the differences between the three. He doesn't renounce actions, only the sense of doership. Calmness and purity are born from this frame of mind. A patient in the hospital has no intention to be there permanently. Still, he willingly undergoes treatment with an attitude of detachment. The one who truly renounces the disease of samsara is similar. The sattvic tyagi renounces the fruit of his action in the way a sensible patient seeks to get rid of his disease. Be practical. You go to the hospital for a few days, okay. And then if you're relinquishing everything to attain God, okay, for some time I have to abide by all these rules, then I'll be free. Breathing is the obligatory duty of all living beings. Even an expert in pranayama does not do this with any attachment. They do it as neutrally as others do their normal breathing. One who is free from body consciousness, even while being in the body, is truly healthy. It's a beautiful statement. One who is free from body conscious, even while being in the body, that is true health. One who is free from the sense of doership, even while intensively engaged in actions, is a true yogi. Adoring God, serving society, meditating on the Supreme, all these spiritual activities go on fervently, but the seeker is not conscious that he is the doer of these duties. That is sattvic tyaga. And once somebody asked Amma, in your ashram, much importance is given to service. Isn't action an impediment to true contemplation on the self? Not a good question to ask to Amma. If you criticize service to humanity, you're going to get a mouthful from Amma because it's a completely wrong question. Naturally, Amma gave this person a very long answer, so I'm just going to share a brief excerpt. In this ashram, there are doctors and engineers and people of many other professions. Everyone works according to their capacity. But the residents here also meditate and study the scriptures. They train themselves to perform actions without any attachment. Right? All residents of the ashram? Okay. Working without attachment helps us to get rid of selfishness and body consciousness. When an action is done without attachment, it doesn't cause any karmic bondage. That is the path to liberation. None of the residents here at the ashram, she's talking about Amrita Puri, too bad, none of the residents here at the ashram have any desire for heaven. I think that applies to everybody here too, and all the other ashrams. 90% of them only want to serve the world. Even if offered heaven, they will just wave it goodbye because they already experience heaven in their hearts. They have no need for any other heaven. Their heaven is their own compassionate hearts. She's saying that about her children, but we know that she is the one who is demonstrating that we're just trying to emulate her. Many people have withdrawn from society in the past, claiming to be pure consciousness. But the truth is that they were not prepared to go out among people and serve them. This explains why India's civilization has degenerated to such a degree. She's talking about her own country. She would never say it about other countries. But we can give some thought to our own countries, if it's not America, another country. What we suffer today is the misery caused by all that indifference to needy people. With your question, do you mean to say that we should allow our culture to be impoverished even further? it should be understood that Advaita, the philosophy of non-duality, is something to be lived. It is a state in which we look upon all others as our own self. So if somebody tries to cut the line or, take some, wealth and property that without sharing it with anybody, then we can, understand that these people are not actually practicing the philosophy. They're just talking about it. In this verse 9, Krishna says that in Sattvika Sannyasa, duties are not renounced at all. So, unlike the other two. That means that this person knows the value of yajna, dana, and tapas. As Krishna said in verse 5, they are all purifiers of the wise. But the mind may ask about others. Who's doing it? Who's not doing it? Should I do it too, or is it just a waste of time? But for one convinced about the value, none of this is of any interest to him, because the duty is not conditional. Duty means unconditional. That is why Krishna says it must be done. Well, why is it unconditional? Well, like we said before, because it is a law for the sake of universal harmony and individual peace. Remember, harmony is only possible when there's a cycle. But people want to get the benefit from society without giving back. Every moment of our life happens because someone is doing their job. Our clothes, food, transportation, all these things, they're all done by other people. That means that every moment we use borrowed things, and we will have to repay that karmic debt until our last breath. And this general repayment is yajna. Generally, we make a yajna or an offering of some kind, mental or otherwise, to the original donor, who is God, or we can say Amma made this world. So anything in a general sense comes from Amma, or the Supreme Being. Then Dhanam is repayment to the local donors, the people who give us things in our life, the needy people, because they're also part of society, and for society to be healthy and abundant, we need everybody to be abundant and peaceful. So we have to help those who are not getting enough attention and not getting enough food, clothing, and other necessities. So that's dhanam. You can either do it with money or time, anything. There's so many different ways we can give, but it's about giving. So that's to society. And tapas means constantly avoiding overindulgence. It doesn't mean you have to walk on fire or hang yourself upside down and do what all these crazy people do in some places. It's simply curbing the tendency of the mind to want more and more and more of everything. And these three, yajna, dana, and tapas, are necessary. There's no negotiation about it. And how can we call an action tyaga? Because you're renouncing something. So why do you call that an action? Krishna says, by giving up attachment and the fruits of the actions. So you're not relinquishing the act itself. You're saying, I'm not doing this, it's just my duty, and the fruits, I don't care where they go. So that's a kind of action, a karma of sorts, but not anything like the other ones, the selfishly motivated actions. And when we renounce the fruits of our efforts, don't forget that it includes gratitude. That means we cannot say, that person doesn't have any gratitude. I did so much, I gave so much, but he didn't show any gratitude. Even if it is true, we should never, not only say things, we should never think like that. Renunciation, even of such feelings, is considered to be sattvic sannyasa. Now, when we look at this verse, what impression do we get? If you contemplate on this verse, you realize that this is exactly what Krishna spoke about in chapter 3, when he was talking about Karma Yoga, verses 8 to 9, where he said, "Do your allotted duty. Action is indeed superior to inaction. Even the survival of your body would not be possible without action. Accepting actions performed for yajna, selflessly, this world is in bondage to action. For the sake of yajna, engage in action free from attachment." And in chapter 2, verse 48, he says, "Established in yoga, perform actions having abandoned attachment and having become balanced in success and failure. For balance of mind is called yoga." So if we combine these portions of chapter 2 and 3, we find out that karma yoga is doing our duty, offering to God without attachment and expectation of the results. So what's the difference between karma yoga and sattvic sannyasa? Krishna just gave a new name to the same old karma yoga. That name is sattvika sannyasa. So, for people who see through that similarity and realize this is just the same thing, it's okay. But in Arjuna's case, he really wanted to be a sannyasi so badly. So Krishna is letting him keep that name. Okay. It's basically a booby prize. But he somehow wants to be sannyasi, not a karma yogi. He's not happy with karma yogi. So Krishna says, okay, I'm going to give you a name. You are not a karma yogi, you are a sattvika sannyasi. But to become a sattvika sannyasi, you cannot run away from the battlefield. And you must fight without attachment and with relinquishing the results. Then you become a sattvika sannyasi. Oh great, I'm finally a sannyasi and I'm not a karma yogi anymore. Well, let him think that way, as long as he practices it properly. And in chapter 9, Krishna talked about bhakti on my favorite number, chapter 9, verse 27. We just had Amma's birthday 2 days ago, so I love to remember this verse on that day. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer as an oblation in sacrifice, whatever you give away, whatever austerity you practice, offer it all unto me. We're trying, Amma. We're really trying. So how do we define this kind of bhakti? It's offering one's duties to the Lord. It's just another form of karma yoga. Everything you do, offer it to me. Okay, that's my way of showing my love to you. So, but that's also karma yoga, and that's also sattvika sannyasa. That means that the three are all the same. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and sattvika sannyasa are the same sadhana, regardless of what we call them. And what is that? What is the result of all that? Preparation for self-knowledge. The inner purity that we need. We need a thorough inner purification, and we're not going to get that just by reading the Upanishads. We have to have love, selflessness, and the ability to relinquish things that are not necessary for a spiritual life. Then all these things put together, we can call them karma yoga, we can call them bhakti yoga, or we can call them sannyasa. It doesn't matter. There's only one way of doing it. And until we are ready to immerse ourselves in deep contemplation for hours and hours, like Amma did with the initial disciples, we go on doing our duty in whatever form it may be. And through those efforts, we will purify our antakarana, or our mind and intellect, and that makes us ready for deeper contemplation. That is what Krishna is going to tell us about in the following verses. Chidbhavananda Swami has a introduction to the next verse. How can it be known that this sadhak, this seeker, is perfectly attuned to the right path of renunciation? That clarification comes next. And Shankaracharya says, now, therefore, with the intention of teaching how such a person, whose antakarana, mind and intellect, have been purified by the performance of obligatory rites, and who has turned towards self-knowledge, how such a person may gradually become unwavering in self-knowledge. The Lord says in the next class. And with the remaining minutes of today's class, I will share some of the questions that came. The one person who requested to have access to the earlier Gita classes on YouTube, I hope you got that. If not, please send an email one more time just to make sure that we got it right. And a few more questions that I could not answer last week. The person was talking about an elderly person, I think it was her mother or grandmother, who died in her sleep. And then she says, okay, let's talk about someone who might have been wealthy, not her grandma or mother anymore. The question is, imagine there to be a wealthy person who lives on earth. Let's pretend they are a billionaire. They do a lot of good with their wealth, contributing millions to organizations who are dedicated to those in need, contributing to scientific exploration, and are vocal about their opinions regarding the politics. Overall, this person is a good person, but they don't believe in God. They have even publicly mentioned views about their disbelief in God. So the question is, based on this information, there's a little more information, but I think you get the idea. Is this person dharmic or adharmic? Is this person's contribution to society, does it go up as dharmic or adharmic? So, I would say that yes, the person is dharmic to some degree. But even he calls himself, but though he may call himself as an atheist, I would say he's wrong, or he or she. Even though he calls him that, it doesn't sound like he's really an atheist. Even the scriptures refer to humanity itself as a form of God. This person is probably saying that they cannot believe in the religious teachings they have been fed from childhood on, but they are certainly not an atheist because they have love and devotion to humanity. Someday, maybe the next birth, they will encounter a more rational explanation of spirituality and embrace it wholeheartedly. So yes, the donations also would qualify as dharma as long as they're not, boasting about it and all these things that Krishna is talking about. Don't say, hey, I donated all this money, so I get this back, and you should respect me. To the degree we indulge in such thoughts and actions, then the level of dharma goes down, way down. So hopefully that's not the case. The next question was, are you going to continue teaching online after we complete the 18th chapter of the Gita? If so, what will it be? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. And they wanted to they're asking if I'm going to put all the things on YouTube. None of the videos are publicly published. I don't know what's going to happen about that. The remaining chapters will gradually be uploaded, but not publicly. It'll be just private, not private, what is it? It's unlisted links for people who are seriously studying. It just doesn't seem useful otherwise. I do have another text in mind to follow after the Gita, but we have another few months. This is a very long chapter, so I think even if we go without any break in between, it was still going to take us until late February, March. So hold your horses and just, we'll see. You'll find out when the time is right. For now, focus on the actual text that we're studying now. So, one more question. I think we have enough time. I have been attached to one person for a long time, and I was attracted by the person's compassion and love towards others. But it was limited to myself, and I know love relationship is not something you could get the result you want if you work hard, and it isn't the goal of life. Only if two people like two rivers running towards the sea, which is the true self of Amma, it's the true self, or Amma instead of stuck together is meaningful. A little bit confusing English here. But how could I deal, this is the question, how can I deal with my strong feelings which disturb the mind, and how to detach as a spiritual seeker? Okay, that's the main point. Well, this goes for everybody, but you have to remember that you yourself gave importance to the person. Before you met that person, they were nothing to you. You had no interest in them. You didn't have to ask them to do anything in your life. You weren't sad when they were gone. You weren't happy when they might have been behind you or nearby you. You made them special in your mind. Because, as they say, you cannot make someone love you. They themselves have to love you. You cannot make them love you. The problem is that when people start to like someone, it's unconscious. And by the time you realize, it is too late to change your mind easily. You have already programmed yourself to view the other person as your beloved. Again, that's unconsciously. Now, you have to make it a conscious process of deprogramming your mind. It's harder, but still possible. People do it all the time. And even if you haven't done it before in this life, you have already done it over and over in many lifetimes. So, you could do it then, and you can do it now. Just believe in yourself and focus more on Amma and your spiritual growth. One more question, which I think might be the only one remaining. I'm going to have to shorten it dramatically because it's about different dimensions. The questioner said that I talked about going to different dimensions after we leave this world. In what scripture and where in the scripture other dimensions are talked about. So if an avatar is medium and God is higher than Jivan Mukti, blah, blah, blah. How is karma accumulated in Zakshta and other dimensions? Okay, please. It is not necessary to focus on such things. If you're living in that dimension, okay, we can talk about it. But why drag yourself out of this dimension to some dimension that is totally irrelevant for you at this moment? And you don't even know, nobody knows what dimension they're going to go to after they leave their body. And when I use that word dimension, it meant more like different worlds. But if I say worlds, you'll say where they are. I don't see them on the telescope. So they're not actual planets. They're not actual worlds. They are, you could say, dimensions, because that is the only way to understand it a little more scientifically. For a amoeba, our world is like a different dimension. How long do they live? For them that feels so long. And a worm feels like he's living forever. And for us, they're only, a few weeks or however long they live. Nothing like our lifespan. And, compare with human beings, the devas, the sort of like demigods, we could say, their lifetimes are much longer than ours. But we still feel like I lived a long life. Whereas, one day in Brahma's, lifetime is just a few seconds in ours. No, sorry, other way around, sorry. Our lifetime is, a lifespan is like 2 seconds in the world of Brahma. I forget the exact calculation, you get the idea. So, thinking about dimensions is a distraction, honestly, and it should be shunned as a waste of time that doesn't help any spiritual seeker. If you want to grow spiritually, really you have to just drop these things. I'm sorry for being so blunt, but this is, I believe this person is a serious seeker, so I would encourage them to drop this topic and just focus on what Amma teaches and what is in the scriptures. If you cannot find it in the scriptures, that means it's not important. Take it that way, all right? Namah Shivaya. So we'll close with the first 2 closing mantras, prayers, and those who have time, please join us in a brief meditation. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Amriteshwariye Namaha. Those of you who are remaining to meditate, please close your eyes, relax your body and mind. Check your posture, trying to keep your spine relatively straight. With each long, deep breath, feel your mind and body relaxing further and further. Feel Amma's subtle presence all around you. Feel her embrace, the universal embrace, and feel her in your heart. Now focus your attention on your breathing process. Be a witness to the harmonious and peaceful flow of the air as it goes in and out. Now let us visualize our beloved Amma. You may visualize her in your heart chakra or between the eyebrows or before you, whichever helps you to visualize her clearly. You may visualize her in whatever form you wish. So long as you can focus, concentrate, and immerse yourself in that visualization. Looking at her beautiful form, let us pray to her that we can become the kind of spiritual aspirant we hope to be, we wish to be. O Amma, whether it is karma yoga, bhakti yoga, sannyasa yoga, the name doesn't matter to me, Amma. Please simply make me a good person, a loyal devotee, a karma yogi through your eyes, or a sattvic sannyasi in your eyes. Setting aside the name, I want those inner qualities so I can be a proper child of you, your devotee, your disciple. Oh Amma, you are the only role model for your children. Nobody even comes close. So help me and all your children to value your example more than anything else. When my mind reaches for pleasure, greed, jealousy, anger, all of the negative qualities, when the mind goes there, oh Amma, please help me remember you. Without that remembrance, I can never be a true devotee or disciple of you, Amma. May that constant remembrance be the fire that I maintain throughout my life, in my heart, burning brightly. This is all I ask of you, Amma. Give me that remembrance, and may it never waver. Now let us close with a final prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnaad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you exhale, you can open your eyes if you wish. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for joining us and hope to see you next week.